The cold wind cut through like a blade, lashing at the old man and his granddaughter as they made their way into the luxurious restaurant, where the warm lights seemed reserved only for those who could afford them. Lucas, an elderly man with eyes full of exhaustion, held tightly to the hand of Mia, the granddaughter he loved more than life itself. Mia, her face pale from hunger, gazed longingly at the steaming plates of food, her large, round eyes glimmering with a faint, desperate hope. "Just a small piece of bread for my granddaughter," Lucas pleaded, his voice trembling yet still retaining a sense of dignity. But instead of being met with compassion, the restaurant owner coldly accused him of theft, a cruel accusation that cut deeply into the pride he had fought to keep his entire life. Mia, startled, clung to him, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched the beloved grandfather she adored being humiliated. In that heartbreaking moment, Clara, a waitress with compassionate eyes, stepped forward. She saw the pain and boundless love in Lucas's gaze. With a courageous decision, Clara took an unexpected action, bringing a ray of warmth to pierce the cold hearts around them. What happened next not only stunned everyone present but also touched even the iciest souls. Stay tuned to witness this miracle, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to catch more heartwarming stories in the future. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windows of the elegant El Paraíso restaurant, where the air was filled with the aroma of expensive dishes and the quiet hum of refined conversations. The evening, like so many others before it, was passing peacefully until the door burst open, drawing the attention of all. Lucas, a frail, weary old man, staggered in, carrying his granddaughter Emma in his arms. Emma's hair was tangled, her wide eyes filled with fear as she clung to him. Lucas's clothes were soaked and tattered, with water dripping onto the polished floor, leaving stark marks in contrast to the opulence around them. "Please, help me," Lucas whispered, his voice a quiet plea, still carrying a shred of dignity. He approached the counter where Don Javier, the owner of the restaurant, stood with a cold, increasingly irritated expression. "My granddaughter needs food. Just a bowl of soup or a piece of bread," he begged. Don Javier folded his arms, his eyebrows raised. "This is not a place for beggars," he replied, his words cutting into Lucas's pride like a blade. The entire room fell silent, with patrons staring, some whispering uneasily. "We are not begging," Lucas said, his voice trembling but resolute. "I will pay you back as soon as I can, but the child needs food now." Don Javier tilted his head, narrowing his eyes with suspicion. "And how do I know you're not just trying to deceive us?" His cold gaze swept over Lucas's ragged clothes. "You should have thought of that before stepping in here." Emma clutched her grandfather's coat tightly, tears falling, her sobs piercing the hearts of anyone listening. "Please, sir," Lucas implored, dropping to his knees on the cold floor, his voice breaking with desperation. "I will do anything to pay for this meal. She is all I have left." Don Javier stepped back, discomfort flashing across his face. "You don't belong here," he said sharply. "Leave now before I call security." Lucas remained on his knees, feeling the chill seep into his bones, as Emma's small hand clutched his, seeking comfort. The once lively restaurant now sat in tense silence, broken only by the sound of heavy rain outside. Don Javier stood behind the counter, his gaze icy, seeing the old man and the child as blemishes on his establishment's perfect image. "I've already said it," he repeated, his voice growing colder. "Leave immediately." Lucas slowly rose, lifting Emma into his arms, his face pale with despair. But Emma's tear-streaked, hungry eyes made his heart ache unbearably. "Please," he tried once more, but Don Javier cut him off. "Enough! Get out!" he snapped, pointing firmly at the door. Emma burst into tears, her sobs drawing uneasy glances from the guests. A middle-aged man leaned over to whisper to his wife, "They're probably just trying to scam us." Don Javier overheard and nodded slightly, as if to validate his long-absent sense of empathy. Lucas braced himself to make a decision, but before he could speak further, a soft yet firm voice cut through the tension. "That's enough. Every eye turned to Clara, the young waitress who had watched the scene unfold with a mix of anxiety and sympathy. "This isn't right," Clara said, her eyes bright with determination. Don Javier turned, startled and annoyed. "Clara, this is none of your business. Get back to the kitchen." "No, sir," Clara said, her voice unwavering. "I can't stand by and watch this. They are clearly in desperate need." She looked at Emma, her heart aching at the sight of the frail child with tearful eyes. Don Javier opened his mouth to argue but hesitated, and used to being challenged, especially by a young woman. The room fell silent, everyone holding their breath. Clara seized the moment of hesitation. "They're not asking for charity, only for a chance," she continued, her eyes filled with hope. Lucas looked at Clara, his heart swelling with gratitude, a small glimmer of hope in his tired eyes. Don Javier finally exhaled, his eyes narrowing with irritation. "Do what you want," he said, turning away in frustration. "But don't think this changes anything." Clara guided Lucas and Mia to a quiet table in the corner, away from the judgmental stares. Mia was still sobbing, her wide eyes wet as she clung to Clara, as if she were the only source of comfort holding her steady. "Sit here," Clara said gently, helping Mia into a chair. "I'll get you something to eat." Lucas could barely speak. Exhausted in body and spirit, he was overwhelmed by Clara's simple kindness, a light he hadn't felt in so long. "I don't know how to thank you," Lucas whispered, his voice breaking. "You don't need to thank me," Clara smiled, her expression offering more comfort than words. "Sometimes we all need a helping hand. Wait here. I'll be back soon." She hurried to the kitchen, leaving Lucas to endure the heavy gazes of the patrons. The restaurant's atmosphere was tense, filled with a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Some customers whispered among themselves, unsure whether to pity or scorn the old man and his granddaughter. In the kitchen, Clara asked the chef for a hot bowl of soup and a piece of bread. As she waited, her mind replayed the scene she had just witnessed. She knew she was risking her job by defying Don Javier, but the thought of Mia crying from hunger hurt more than the fear of consequences. When the soup was ready, Clara rushed back. Approaching the table, Clara found Mia had fallen asleep, her head resting on the table, too exhausted to wait for food. "Here you go," Clara whispered, placing the soup and bread before Lucas. "Let her sleep for a while. The food will be here when she wakes up." Lucas looked at the meal, tears streaming down his face. "I don't know how to repay you," he choked out. Clara's smile was gentle. "You don't need to repay me," she said. "Just keep holding on to hope." Lucas bowed his head, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given us more than a meal. You've given us hope." Clara sat across from them, her eyes filled with empathy. "Sometimes, even a small act of kindness is enough to remind us that we're not alone," she said. "Tell me your story. Maybe I can help in another way." Lucas took a deep breath, holding Mia's tiny hand as he began. He spoke of losing his job, the harsh struggle of daily survival, and how Mia was the only thing that kept him going. Clara listened intently, her heart breaking with each word. "We're not beggars," Lucas tried to stay composed. "We just need a chance to get back on our feet." Clara felt a surge of resolve within her. "You will have that chance," she promised. "I'll do everything I can to help." Their conversation was interrupted by a noise from the kitchen. Don Javier appeared, his face stern, his eyes glaring at Clara and Lucas. Clara knew she would have to face the consequences, but she was ready. She looked at Mia, still asleep, and thought to herself, "I won't let this world take away what little she has left." Lucas squeezed Clara's hand, a silent gesture of gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. Clara rose slowly, feeling Don Javier's piercing gaze follow her every step. She knew her actions might come at a cost, but her conscience wouldn't let her back down. Mia remained asleep, her small hand clutching her grandfather's worn-out coat. "Lucas," Clara said, her voice calm but determined, "I'm going to talk to Don Javier. Maybe we can find a way to help you and Mia." Lucas nodded, weary but holding onto a fragile glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Clara. You've done so much for us. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Clara smiled, reassuring him. "Don't worry about that now. What matters is that Mia is safe and has food to eat. I'll be back soon." Clara walked toward the kitchen, where Don Javier was waiting, arms crossed, his face stern. She knew she had to choose her words carefully. "Sir," she began, her voice steady and respectful. "I know I went against the rules, but I couldn't stand by and watch that child suffer. They have nowhere else to go, and we can't throw them out into the cold rain." Don Javier sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "You don't understand, Clara. This is a high-end restaurant, a place where people of status come to dine. If we start helping everyone in need, we'll alienate our regular customers. We can't afford that risk." Clara's eyes remained steadfast as she met his gaze. "I understand your concerns, sir. But perhaps there's another way. If we offer Lucas a job, even if it's just cleaning or some other task, in exchange for food and temporary shelter, it wouldn't be charity, it would be a fair exchange." Don Javier hesitated, clearly taken aback by her suggestion. He looked at Clara, then glanced toward the kitchen door where Lucas and Mia waited. "But what if he's not trustworthy? What if this disrupts our business?" Clara took a deep breath. "Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, sir. Mia shouldn't have to suffer any longer. If this doesn't work out, I'll take full responsibility." Don Javier pondered for several moments, his face betraying an inner struggle. He was a cautious businessman, but the sincerity in Clara's eyes made him reconsider. "Fine," he finally said, his voice less rigid. "We'll give it a try. If Lucas works hard and doesn't cause any trouble, perhaps we'll work something out. But remember, Clara, you will bear the consequences if this goes wrong." Clara breathed a sigh of relief, though she could feel the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. "Thank you, sir. You won't regret this." She returned to where Lucas and Mia were waiting, their faces etched with anxiety. "What did he say?" Lucas asked, his voice shaky. Clara smiled. "I convinced Don Javier to give you a chance. You can work here, and in return you'll have food and a place to stay. But it's a trial, so you'll have to do your best." Lucas was momentarily speechless, tears of gratitude streaming down his face. "I don't know how to thank you, Clara. I promise I won't let you down." Clara gently patted his shoulder, offering reassurance. "Things will get better. You just have to hold on." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling as though a great weight had been lifted from him. For the first time in a long while, he dared to believe things could actually improve. He looked at Mia, still peacefully asleep, and whispered softly, "We're going to be all right, my love. We're going to be okay." The next morning, the sun timidly peeked over the horizon, casting a gentle golden light over El Paraíso. Lucas and Mia sat in a corner, enjoying a simple but warm breakfast, which felt like a feast after days of hunger. Mia was still a bit sleepy, but the small smile on her face brought warmth to Lucas's heart, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. From a distance, Clara watched them, feeling both relieved and anxious. She knew this was only the beginning, and the real test would start once Lucas began working. Meanwhile, Don Javier kept his usual cautious demeanor, observing everything with a keen eye as the restaurant started to fill with guests. Clara approached Lucas, her expression encouraging. "Ready to start?" she asked, trying to mask her own nervousness. Lucas stood up, his face set with determination. "I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes." Clara led him into the kitchen, where Don Javier waited, his stern face scrutinizing Lucas from head to toe. "All right," Don Javier said, leaving no room for doubt. "You'll start by wiping tables. Then we'll see how you handle the kitchen work. I want to see dedication, or this will be both your first and last chance." Lucas nodded firmly. "You can count on me. I'll give it my all." He got to work immediately, cleaning with a thoroughness that even surprised Clara. He meticulously wiped down tables, handled dishes in the kitchen, and followed every instruction, all while keeping an eye on Mia, who played quietly in a safe corner under Clara's watchful eye. But not everyone in the restaurant accepted Lucas's presence. Some customers began whispering, questioning whether he was taking advantage of Clara's kindness. How long is he going to be around? One customer muttered to his wife. Clara overheard these murmurs and noticed the scrutinizing looks starting to weigh on Lucas. Though he focused on his work, it was clear that the whispered doubts and stares were affecting him, creating a tense atmosphere. Don Javier, sensing the shift, knew he had to address it. Don Javier approached Lucas, who was wiping down a table. "Lucas," he said, his voice firm but laced with scrutiny. "I see that you're making an effort, but some of our patrons are uncomfortable with your presence. We need to address this." Lucas froze, a chill running down his spine. He had anticipated this moment but had hoped for more time to prove his worth. "Sir," he replied, his voice full of worry, "I just need a chance to show that I can be useful. I don't want to be a burden to anyone." Don Javier was about to respond when Clara quickly stepped in. "Sir," she said, standing beside Lucas, "I understand the customer's concerns, but maybe we can show them that Lucas is working to earn his keep. If he can handle visible tasks, it might help them see that he's contributing, not just taking." Don Javier considered her words, clearly contemplating the proposal seriously. "All right," he said. "If Lucas can demonstrate his dedication, perhaps it will ease their discomfort, but that's up to him." Lucas felt a wave of relief, but it was mixed with a renewed sense of determination. "I'll do whatever is necessary, sir. Just tell me what needs to be done."
Don Javier nodded. "Samwe te pist."
"Clara," he addressed her, "help him with tasks that people can easily notice. Let's see if he can earn their respect through hard work." Clara smiled encouragingly. "We'll make it work together," she said. Lucas felt for the first time that he might truly have a place in this restaurant. As they set about their new plan, Don Javier continued to observe from a distance, harboring a cautious hope that perhaps this act of kindness might yield a positive outcome. Lucas threw himself into his work with tireless energy, taking on tasks that were hard to miss. Quickly clearing tables, attentively assisting customers, and even helping with simple food preparations. His every action radiated gratitude and genuine effort. Meanwhile, Mia, now with a healthier glow and a full belly, played happily in her corner, drawing pictures. Her gentle laughter echoed softly through the restaurant, bringing a bit of warmth to the once rigid atmosphere. Not everyone was won over immediately. Some customers still eyed Lucas with suspicion, and the whispers had not completely ceased. Don Javier noticed this but also saw that Lucas's unrelenting dedication was beginning to sway some opinions. One afternoon, as Lucas was cleaning a table near the entrance, an elderly woman with a cane slowly walked in. Seeing her, Lucas immediately stepped forward, offering his assistance to help her to a seat. "How can I assist you, ma'am?" he asked respectfully. The old woman looked at Lucas with a kind, motherly expression. "Young man, I just need a place to rest for a while. The streets are so busy today," she said gently. Lucas smiled, pulling out a chair for her by the window. "I'll bring you a glass of water," he said, and made his way back to the kitchen. While he was away, the elderly woman's gaze fell on Mia, who was quietly playing in the corner, her expression curious. When Lucas returned with the water, she asked softly, "Is that little girl your daughter?" Lucas gave her a wistful smile and shook his head. "No, ma'am. She's my granddaughter, Mia. We've been through a lot, but Don Javier has given us a chance here." The old woman nodded, sipping her water thoughtfully. "Kindness is a rare gift," she said after a moment. "But when you share it, it often comes back to you in unexpected ways." Before Lucas could respond, the woman rose, though it took some effort, and approached Don Javier at the counter. "Sir," she said in a voice that was soft but firm, "I'd like to pay for the little girl's meal today, and I also have a small gift for her. It's a toy I bought for my own grandchild, but I think this little girl might enjoy it even more." Don Javier was surprised but nodded respectfully. "Of course, ma'am. We'd be honored." The woman smiled, and with Lucas's help, she stepped outside to retrieve the toy. When she returned, Mia was sitting beside Clara, ready to eat her bowl of soup. The elderly woman approached and presented Mia with a beautiful doll dressed in a bright blue dress. Mia's eyes widened with amazement, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "This is for you, sweetheart," the woman said, gently brushing Mia's cheek. "I hope it makes you happy." Mia cradled the doll in her hands as if it were the most precious treasure she had ever received. "Thank you, ma'am," she whispered, her eyes shining with joy. The scene warmed the hearts of other patrons in the restaurant. One by one, they began to show their own acts of kindness. A man left a generous tip on his table, whispering to Clara, "Use this to help the little girl." Another person dropped off a bag of clothes at the entrance, asking for it to be given to Lucas and Mia. Don Javier observed everything from behind the counter, feeling an unexpected warmth rise within him. The restaurant's atmosphere was changing, becoming something he had never witnessed before. Clara noticed the softening in Don Javier's expression and approached him. "Sir, it seems things are starting to change," she said gently. Don Javier nodded, his gaze still fixed on the room where people were coming together. "Yes, Clara," he replied, his voice tinged with admiration. "Perhaps kindness truly does have a ripple effect." Lucas looked around, seeing the gifts, the smiles, and the acts of generosity. Tears of gratitude filled his eyes once again. For the first time in AL, Clara noticed the softening in Don Javier's expression and approached him. "Sir, it seems things are starting to change," she said gently. Don Javier nodded, his gaze still fixed on the room where people were coming together. "Yes, Clara," he replied, his voice tinged with admiration. "Perhaps kindness truly does have a ripple effect." Lucas looked around, seeing the gifts, the smiles, and the acts of generosity. Tears of gratitude filled his eyes once again. For the first time in a long while, he felt that he and Mia were no longer alone. Mia, clutching her new doll, ran over to hug her grandfather. "We're going to be okay, Grandpa," she whispered. Lucas felt hope well up inside him, strong and undeniable. At last, it seemed like they had found a place where they could start anew. In the days that followed, El Paraíso gradually became known as a symbol of compassion in the town. Lucas worked tirelessly, and his presence became accepted by the patrons. Mia, with her doll always by her side, became a beloved fixture, melting hearts with her innocent smile. Yet, Don Javier remained cautiously optimistic, aware that the decision to let Lucas and Mia stay indefinitely was still a risk he had to manage. One morning, as Don Javier was reviewing his accounts, Clara knocked gently on the door and stepped in, looking a bit apprehensive. "Sir," she said, "I'd like to talk about Lucas." Don Javier looked up, his eyes thoughtful. "What would you like to discuss, Clara?" Clara sat down, her expression serious. "I know you have concerns, but Lucas has proven his value. He works hard, never complains, and he's brought a sense of community here that we never had before." Don Javier listened, then slowly closed his ledger. "I understand what you're saying, Clara, but giving him a permanent position is a big decision. What if he can't keep up? Or if customers start complaining again?" Clara leaned forward, her eyes full of determination. "You are a businessman, and I understand the risks, but sometimes we need to make decisions with our hearts. Lucas and Mia have brought more than just labor. They've created a new atmosphere, and the customers have noticed." Don Javier was silent for a moment, contemplating Clara's words. He knew she was right. Everything had indeed improved since Lucas and Mia arrived. Even he, a man who took pride in his strict professionalism, felt a change in his heart. Finally, he stood up and looked out the window. "You're right, Clara. Maybe it's time to do something different. I'll talk to Lucas." Clara smiled, relieved. "Thank you, sir. This means so much to them." Later that day, Don Javier called Lucas into his office. Lucas walked in, his heart pounding, unsure of what was about to happen. "Lucas," Don Javier began, his voice calm but firm, "I've been observing you over the past few days. I've noticed that." Don Javier looked at Lucas, his expression stern but thoughtful. "You are a dedicated worker, not afraid of challenges." he said. "I've also seen that you've brought something valuable to this restaurant." Lucas's heart beat faster as he tried to understand the meaning behind Don Javier's words. "Sir, I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I've done my best to prove that I can be useful." Don Javier nodded, turning back to look at Lucas. "And you have proven that," he continued. "That's why I've decided to offer you a permanent position at El Paraíso. I want you and Mia to stay here. We will ensure you have a safe place to live and food on the table every day." Lucas felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Don Javier's words echoed in his mind like a dream. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. This means so much to us," Lucas said, his voice choked with emotion, his hands trembling as he tried to hold back tears of joy. Don Javier gave a small, rare but genuine smile. "Thank you for your hard work, Lucas. Keep it up, and I believe everything will be all right." Lucas could no longer hold back his emotions. He extended his hand, and Don Javier shook it firmly. "Thank you, truly, thank you," Lucas said, tears streaming down his face. Don Javier nodded once more, before resuming his serious demeanor. "Now get back to work. We still have a long day ahead of us." Lucas left the office, feeling as if a huge burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He returned to the dining area, where Clara was waiting. When she saw his radiant smile, she knew immediately what the news was. "We did it," Lucas whispered, his voice unable to hide his joy. "They've given us a real chance." Clara smiled and hugged Lucas, sharing in his happiness. "I knew he would do the right thing," she said. "Now, you just have to keep proving that you deserve this opportunity." Just then, Mia ran up and grabbed Lucas's hand. "Everything's going to be okay now, Grandpa," she whispered. Lucas looked at his granddaughter, his heart full of love and relief. "Yes, my dear. Everything is going to be all right now." In the days that followed, Lucas settled into the rhythm of the restaurant. His hard work and dedication began to get noticed, not only by Don Javier and Clara but also by the regular customers. Mia's presence in the restaurant became a source of joy, as her innocence and laughter brought a fresh energy to El Paraíso, making it more welcoming than ever. Lucas woke up early every morning, arranging tables and preparing everything meticulously. By the time the first customers arrived, he was ready to greet them with a sincere smile. Mia spent her mornings drawing colorful pictures in the corner, lovingly watched over by Clara. The customers who had once been skeptical of Lucas now greeted him with nods and smiles, recognizing the value of his hard work. Don Javier observed this change and felt more confident about his decision. One morning, as Lucas was busy wiping down tables, he heard a familiar voice. "Good morning, Lucas." Señor Rodriguez, an elderly but distinguished customer, approached. Lucas paused and smiled. "Good morning, sir. How may I assist you?" Señor Rodriguez smiled, his eyes filled with respect. "I've been watching you, Lucas. You are a dedicated worker, and I want you to know that I appreciate your efforts." Lucas was surprised by the unexpected compliment. "Thank you, sir. I just want to do my best to repay the opportunity I've been given."
Señor Rodríguez nodded, pleased.
"You're doing very well. Keep it up, and soon, everyone here will see you as part of the family." Those words touched Lucas deeply. He knew that, despite his hard work, he still had a long way to go before he truly felt he belonged. But hearing that from a respected customer like Señor Rodriguez was a sign that he was on the right path. Later that day, Clara approached Lucas in the kitchen, a smile on her face. "You're doing so well, Lucas," she said. "Even Don Javier has mentioned that things have improved since you started working here." Lucas smiled, feeling both relieved and grateful. "I'm so happy to hear that, Clara. I really want this place to feel like home for us." Clara nodded, understanding his feelings. "And now, Lucas, you and Mia are part of the family here." Mia ran over with a drawing in her hands. "Grandpa, look, I drew us at the park," she said excitedly. Lucas took the drawing, his heart overflowing with emotion. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. One day we'll have a real picnic, just like that." The light of childhood joy was slowly replacing the fear in Mia's eyes. But even though they had made great strides, challenges still lay ahead. Some of the longtime patrons still had trouble accepting Lucas and Mia's presence. One afternoon, when the restaurant was busy, Lucas overheard a young customer's harsh remark, "What is this place? A restaurant or an orphanage?" Lucas felt a pang in his chest, but before he could respond, Clara stepped in. "We believe in helping those who need it," she said, her voice steady. "Mia and Lucas are part of our family now. If that's a problem, perhaps you should reconsider where you want to dine." The young man flushed, muttered something, and fell silent. Lucas looked at Clara, his eyes filled with gratitude. But he also knew that his journey to prove himself was far from over. Despite having to face judgmental glances and whispered comments, Lucas felt that every difficulty was worth it when he saw Mia happily playing, blissfully unaware of the challenges around them. He promised himself he would do whatever it took to build a brighter future for her, no matter what obstacles came his way. As time went on, Lucas became an integral part of El Paraíso. His hard work and positive attitude earned him respect from everyone. Mia's innocent presence continued to bring laughter and warmth, and her friendship with Clara and the other staff grew stronger. Don Javier, who had once been so cautious about Lucas, now saw him as an essential part of the team. His sternness had gradually softened, and over the months, he began to appreciate what Lucas had brought to the restaurant. Not just in labor, but in spirit and community. One day, when the restaurant had quieted down after lunch, Don Javier called Lucas into his office. Respectfully, Lucas stepped into the small room, still feeling that every conversation with his boss could be a test. But today, there was something different in Don Javier's eyes. "Lucas," Don Javier began, sitting behind his desk, "I've been thinking a lot about everything since you and Mia came. I want you to know that in the time you've been here, you've proven your worth in ways I couldn't have imagined." Lucas felt a wave of relief and gratitude, but he remained silent, waiting for Don Javier to continue. "I've seen the respect customers and staff have for you. The atmosphere here has changed, become warmer, because of you. I think it's time we talked about your future here, not as a temporary worker, but as a permanent member of this restaurant's family." Lucas could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Sir, I don't know how to express my gratitude. I just want to keep working hard to repay all the kindness you've shown to Mia and me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Don Javier smiled gently, a rare but genuine smile. "You deserve it, Lucas. I want to offer you a formal contract, a stable salary, and, more importantly, I want you and Mia to have a real home, not just the temporary quarters behind the restaurant." Lucas stood still, tears welling up in his eyes as he heard those words. "A real home?" he repeated, his voice filled with emotion. "Sir, this means the world to us. I promise to keep giving my best." Don Javier nodded, pleased. "I know you will, Lucas, and I want you to know that everyone here, from Clara to the rest of the staff, and even the customers, considers you and Mia part of the family." Lucas couldn't hold back his tears. After years of living with uncertainty, he and Mia finally had the stability and security he had dreamed of. "Thank you, sir," Lucas said, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you for everything." Don Javier stood up, extended his hand, and shook Lucas's hand firmly. "You've earned it, Lucas. Now go share the good news with Mia. I'm sure she'll be delighted." Lucas left the office with a heart full of joy. He found Mia in her corner, playing with her drawings. Kneeling beside her, he smiled. "Mia, Grandpa has some wonderful news for you," he said, his eyes bright. Mia looked up, curious. "What is it, Grandpa?" Lucas took her small hand in his. "We're going to have a real home, my dear. A place just for us, where we won't have to worry about tomorrow anymore." Mia's eyes widened, and then a radiant smile spread across her face. "Really, Grandpa? We'll have our own home?" Lucas nodded, his voice breaking. "Yes, sweetheart. A real home, where we'll be safe and happy." Mia threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Lucas felt all the burdens of the past lift away, and he knew they had finally found a place to start over. As time passed, Lucas embraced his new way of life. His hard work was highly valued by everyone, and Mia continued to spread joy with her pure innocence. Don Javier and Clara, who had once been strangers, had now become family. One morning, as the radiant sun shone over Lucas and Mia's new home, a feeling of peace filled the air. The simple yet cozy house, with a small garden out front, was the place Lucas had dreamed of for so long. Mia ran around the garden, giggling as she explored every nook and cranny. Don Javier and Clara came by for a visit, bringing small gifts. Clara gave them a potted plant, a symbol of growth and new beginnings. Don Javier brought a toolbox, ready to lend a helping hand. "Looks like you two have settled in nicely," Clara said with a smile, watching Mia play happily. "Yes," Lucas replied, his eyes full of gratitude. "I could never repay the kindness you've all shown us." Clara shook her head, smiling. "You already have, Lucas. You and Mia have given us love and a sense of unity, and that is priceless." Don Javier, who was busy fixing something, nodded in agreement. "Exactly, Lucas. When you arrived, I had no idea things would change so much. You've brought a sense of community we were missing." Lucas was deeply moved, his voice thick with emotion. "It was the chance you gave me that made all of this possible. I will be forever grateful." Mia tugged at his hand, her eyes sparkling. "Grandpa, look, we have a tree. Can we make a swing?" Lucas laughed, letting Mia's excitement wash over him. "Of course, my dear." Don Javier looked at the tree and said, "I think I have some wooden planks and rope. We can make a swing today." The three of them worked together to build the swing, and soon Mia was swinging back and forth, her laughter echoing throughout the garden. Lucas watched her, his heart full of happiness and peace. At last, he knew that everything they had endured had been worth it. Looking over at Don Javier and Clara, he said, "Thank you for everything." Clara placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "We are family, Lucas, and will always be here for each other." As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Lucas gently pushed Mia on the swing, his heart overflowing with gratitude. They had overcome every hardship, formed new friendships, and finally found a true home. The Alera ISO restaurant had now become a symbol of hope and new beginnings, a place where Lucas and Mia could face the future with trust and resilience.